Let me start my session, and the rest of them can join as and when they can do. Today, I'll be concentrating on three vital communication styles. You can see the cartoon figures here. They are passive, assertive, aggressive. Right, so most of us have this problem of lack of assertiveness. I can say that some of my students always have asked me how to inculcate this skill, and some of the teachers in teacher training programs have also questioned on this two aspects. So perhaps today's session will be concentrating more of this assertiveness and emotional resilience, which is going to contribute for the well-being of individuals. When I am saying individuals, it can be graduates or your own children or your own well-being perhaps, right? So this passive form of communication style is something like a subservient person who in the name of obedience actually disrespects himself. Okay, and if you're going to be too subservient, I think people will underestimate you, and it is like they can load all their stuff on you. Okay, so it is not good to be passive. On the other extreme, on the right hand side, you see an aggressive person, very angry, right? And he is disrespecting others. Okay, I said for passive, he is. I'll move the slide so you'll be understanding better. This passive person is disrespecting himself, whereas this aggressive person is disrespecting others. Okay, the midway lies the assertive quality, the assertive person, where he protects his own thoughts, ideas, feelings, and territories while respecting others' rights and feelings and thoughts too. Okay, so we are, as teachers, we are expected to be assertive, and it is a quality which is innate in human beings, but then somehow we have forgotten that skill as we grow. So this form of assertiveness is going to be the base for the emotional resilience. Okay, so we'll see more about that in today's session. Before that, let me just brief on leadership skills. You would have learned more on leadership communication for all the past 4 days, but mine will be just one slide on leadership skills where I'm going to just associate it with emotional well-being. I would like to point out the difference between the managerial skills and leadership skills. Management skills is like you manage your resources on a day-to-day basis in order to deliver your task or product or service. Whereas leadership skills engages, motivates, and persuades people towards a vision or an objective or goal. So I think over a period of time, starting the career from managers or teachers, I think we'll have to escalate ourselves to the ladder of leadership skills. Next, I think you will have to differentiate yourself between the power mongering and power giving concept, which means first, I think you will have to know the difference between authority and power. I'll move to the next slide where you can see the difference between authority and power. So I think authority is a control delegated to an individual or group. It is a right, actually, a privilege granted to you, because sometimes even in convocations you would have heard the director or the principal saying that based on the authority vested on me, I declare this convocation open, or I group of students, right? So it is a authority given to you. It is like a privilege given to you. It is technical, and most of the time it's static, and it is illustrated in organizational charts, and it flows most of the time a downward hierarchy, and it is positional. Whereas controls that allows influence on others. If you can disseminate power, right? I have written the word diffuse, which means you can give the power, you can decentralize it so that people can see who you are and reside in the people who uses it. So you need not possess it always. So that's what I call it as power mongering. Okay, so you need not be power mongers. Instead of that, you can be power givers. You can be flexible in that. You can be dynamic in concept, and you can transform that power so that you delegate your works automatically content, it can be a competence, it can be a knowledge, whatever it may be, you can make that knowledge transfer happen. Okay, so it is not like a downward flow. Here you can see it flows in many directions. So this is the basic difference between authority and power. So I think we all can transform ourselves from power mongers to power givers, right? Though we have our designations as assistant professor, associate professor, professor, I think we can, from that authority vested in us, I think we can disseminate the power apart from knowledge. It is not that knowledge alone can be transformed, even power can be decentralized and it can be disseminated. Moving on to the next slide on well-being. My topic today is on emotional well-being and leadership skills. So leadership skills, I said I have just one slide and I have explained what I'm going to deal on and how I'm going to relate it with emotional well-being. So I have talked of 3 emotional characteristics or dimensions of persons, that is passive, aggressive on the extreme, and the midway you have your assertive person. So 3 emotional states and this well-being, how it is related with the well-being. I would like to point out one particular thing of this well-being. More than this Amartya Sen's capability approach, I would like to tell you how well-being is related in terms of capabilities approach. The well-being of a person cannot be reduced to a quantity of good that a person consumes. For example, if person is plumpy, it doesn't mean that he is associated with well-being. Not by the physicality of a person, or sometimes we cannot just say by the psychological well-being alone, right? So there is going to be a mix of certain characteristics which is expected of, so that you are considered as a well-being. We'll see the tenets of it. So well-being in terms of capabilities is related to the refined functionings, right? I can even put it as valuable human functionings, so that it is a multifaceted view of the ability to act, to think, and to communicate with others. I think you all remember the 4 pillars of learning, which I was talking the other day. One second, I will go to the previous slide where Amartya Sen has talked about this capability approach. Here, there is a combination of life skills and practical skills. On the other day, I was talking about Martha Nussbaum's 4 pillars of learning. In that, I think the most crucial points that can be related here is learning to live together, where I think our students can be converted into social capital, I said, which means here capital is the asset. Okay, so how are they going to be turned into social assets? It is like making them develop their thinking skill, interpersonal ability, social skills. All that makes them refined human beings, and that kind of refined human functioning is termed as well-being by Amartya Sen. So it is a combination of life skills, the abilities. I have given the list of array of skill sets the other days on 21st century skills. So that particular array of skill sets, if it is going to be combined with the practical know-how of it, the functioning part of it, I think we are making our students capable, refined in their nature, to contribute to the well-being of their own self. Now, it is a challenge for teachers, how to prepare our students with this kind of skills, the appropriate attitude. And I have already talked about the volatile future we are facing in this 21st century, and it is really challenging. We'll see that what is that challenge, YUCA, okay? I'm sorry, it is VUCA. Volatile in nature, it is uncertain, it is complex, and it is ambiguous, right? And it can also be called as abstract. So 21st century, how it transformed from the 20th century, I think we dealt with it on Tuesday, where I was talking about the transformation of how the nature of jobs, the competitive world, and it is not like one career of 40 years, and it is going to be a changing career for most of our students, where 10 years they work in a company and then switch over to the companies which is going to be remunerative. So such a volatile situation persists, and it's most of the time they are having uncertainty in their jobs and their workplace, complex workplaces, and that is what is representing in these first 3 figures. And the 4th figure, I think you can see the ambiguity in that. right? If you can see the figure here, you can see two pictures, A and B, and both of them have two ambiguous implications, right? You can see two men faces on the first side. On the other side, you can see in the A figure, there is another girl having a doll in her hand. Similarly, in the figure B, you can see a woman turning the other side. Okay, so it is like kind of, even in creativity, there is some abstract ambiguity where students must be risk taking and they must have the daring behavior to face the challenges. So our role as teachers, what are it? Apart from teaching the subject, we are expected to train them in skills. We are expected to coach them for their mastery, for their competence. And then we need to be mentoring their lives to have insights. It can be on competency, it can be on attitudes, it can be on value system, it can be on belief system sometimes. So our role, it was not one thing to teach the subject alone. May it be engineering, may it be science subjects, or may it be any architectural subject for that matter. It is not subject per se these days. We are going to relate it to real life situations and we are going to tell them the practical know-how of it. And I think we need to make the learners ready to face the future confidently and courageously, and make them emotionally, I can say well-being, or it can be resilient or assertive. So in the yesteryears, right, when our fathers and grandfathers studied in our school, right, it was like Gurukul system, or it was like most of the time teaching and preaching most of the time. It is like they preach the values and the students acquire it. Okay, they listen most of the time, and it is not the value system. They live with their guru, right? They had the kind of social setup where they live with their guru, they assist them, they learn everything from them. Now it is not like that. The scenario has completely changed. Knowledge is not free. You have to pay attention. I'm not talking about the cost factor alone. I am also telling about the comprehension ability, where I can only explain to you. I cannot understand for you. Even in our own classrooms, we can see how students switch off. They'll keep their eyes wide open, okay, but then they'll not be listening to us. They can mentally switch off. So you can ask them to listen, but you cannot assure for yourself they have listened to your lecture. It happens so in online lectures like this. Okay, so we need to just imagine that they are listening, especially in online classes like this. Then comes our objectives, right? What am I going to deal with in today's session? We'll try to explore and understand our general thinking and feeling pattern. And most of our pattern is concerned with the resilience and emotional resilience, the need and meaning of it, the factors leading to resilience, the characteristics of a resilient person, how to become resilient. And next comes the assertiveness, how we need to go about it, the need and meaning of it, the skills associated with it, the passive, assertive, and aggressive components, how to become assertive with high messages, and what are the 5 Fs, right? So this is going to be, I'm not saying these are the objectives, but then we'll try to explore and understand how better we can balance our emotional well-being. So it is not just one idea that clicks when we are talking about collaboration or knowledge dissemination, right? It is most of the time 2 or 3 ideas. So what are we going to do? Shall we take like first come, first served basis, and we are going to use the first idea? It is not that way. We are going to have a group activity and all the 3 ideas can be utilized. How to go about doing it? I think every teacher has to clearly locate it and analyze and do it for herself or himself. Now I'll come for an analogy, or perhaps a example. I would like to ask all the participants, have you ever traveled on your road in a mountain range? Okay, life is like this. Either one side, the person you can see, he is very happy with his camera in hand, enjoying the nature. On the other side, one person is very sad. It is not about the left-hand side or the right-hand side seater, but then it is about the notion of happiness and sadness. Okay, maybe he is not feeling good while traveling in mountains, or he's having the feel that he's having that kind of a feel, or perhaps he is preoccupied with his own sadness in life. It can be in a number of reasons, but I feel like life is a choice, right? When you are given an opportunity to enjoy nature, I think you can do it if your physicality permits it. And every single moment we can make a choice, either to be positive or negative, to be happy or unhappy. And sometimes it is like our belief and thinking capacity itself which makes us feel good. For example, I do not know, now in Airways they do not give chocolates, right? Yesterday years it was like when my father traveled in plane, he said he was given chocolates, which means like when ears feel like ears are closed when you travel up, there is a pressure, right? So they give chocolates. When you chew it, I think you will not have the feel of a nausea, or you will not have that feel of blocking of ears. So that was actually automatically when you have chocolates, like your saliva oozes out, and you have the feel good factor, and automatically your mind changes, right? You don't feel the pressure when you chew, right? Sometimes now when they don't give chocolates, like people say me, like, you imagine that a chocolate is given to you, you are chewing a chocolate. Similarly, here in this mountain range, I think people have that feel of I'll get this feeling of nausea when I climb up or climb down. That feeling itself actually preoccupies them, apart from their physical bodily aches or any kind of pain, etc., etc. Okay, so life is a choice. I think we must choose it. So we have the freedom to choose that particular attitude in a given set of circumstances. And Viktor Frankl says that you have to choose it in your own way. Not that because somebody is saying, not that because you have the always the risk-taking mentality. You do it in your way. Your body system permits it. It is all about the perspective you look. You can see the two girls. My mother will say, why this girl is having her hair, having a free hair like this, right? And the other picture, you can see, I'm just having two perspectives here. My mother's perspective, where she'll say that why this girl is so mad, the first figure, right? The second picture, I think, second girl, my daughter would love to see this picture, because most of the time when there is a wind in the upstairs, like, she will stand like this, having a free hair, enjoying the wind. Okay, so it is all about the perspective of how you look at a particular object or an idea or a belief system. So the fundamental truth is we are all in search of happiness, but it is actually a baggage besides us, right? We are searching it outside, and we condition ourselves to be disturbed, actually, right? Sometimes we tend to think crookedly in the sense, right? We get unnecessarily disturbed by carrying the baggage of sadness. I'll talk more about that, how we are doing it. And we invent disturbing beliefs and keep ourselves disturbed about their disturbances, because I can say sometimes we are patterned like that. Okay, we have the capacity to change our cognition and emotional processes, but I can say 70% of the time we don't do it. 30% of the time we try, but 70% of the time we just have our baggage beside us, saying that always lamenting about our sadness, talking about the illness, talking about that I cannot do it, I have so many problems in my life, right? I have most of the scholars I have are very active, right? They're very assertive. But one particular scholar is always has a habit of always lamenting about her problems. She always thinks that her problem is the biggest problem in life. Whenever she comes to me, she comes with a problem. Nowadays, I feel scared to talk to her. Okay, so you can see how they always have that kind of negative feel in them, that they feel diffident about themselves when they talk number of times about the incapacities of themselves. Okay, so I think we need to erode all that from their memories over a period of time. I think it is really challenging to counsel such people, but then we have certain qualities innate in ourselves to possess it on our own. Okay, and you can see that we have a choice. Okay, again, I can say that I cannot say that everybody from tomorrow can acquire it and just climb this ladder of resilience or assertiveness. It is a long due process I think there is some disturbance, Harishri. If you can mute them. There is some external noise disturbing. I do not know from where. Yeah, are you able to hear it? I think Nasrat Khan is speaking to somebody. If you can mute him. Thank you. We also have the capacity. Uh-huh. Just now I was talking about online classrooms and how they don't listen. They just log in and have their own time, I believe. Fine, fine. Okay, let me go with my own slides. People who are listening, I am just handling the class for them. We also have the capacity to change our cognition and emotional processes, I said. How we can see in my next slide. Okay, I would like to point out the difference between attitude and behavior. Okay, attitude is a state of mind and behavior is the performance, the act that is developed by that attitude. Attitude is, you know, that it is internal, and behavior is mostly associated with performance and it is external. Attitude is how you think, while behavior is what you do. Attitude is a person who views something or tends to behave towards it in an evaluative way, and behavior is the manner of behaving or conducting oneself. And I think this word of attitude is most of the time misused by our student community these days. One of my student came and told that she is having an attitude, ma'am. I asked what attitude, positive or negative? Okay, so the word attitude itself is connotated in a negative sense. Okay, so it is actually a quality or perhaps a person's perspective for an activity. It can be most of the time evaluative, and it can change over a period of time. Will it change? We'll question ourselves and see for it how it can be done. So attitude versus behavior is skill versus performance. So I am posing a question to the participants. If it had been an interactive session face to face, I think I would have asked the question and participants would have answered me. Now I am posing the question and I am answering also, because I am not even able to see the faces of the participants. Does attitude affect behavior? I am giving an example of what is an attitude. An attitude is a rather stable mental position held towards an idea, an object, or person. So it is most of the time stable, right? And behavior refers to the actions or reactions of an object. You can see how a person is topsy-turvy, and it can be any kind of reaction like this. Okay, it can be action or it can be reaction for an idea or an ideology or an object or any kind of an organism for that matter. So in the first point I have said attitude is stable. So do I mean to say that it cannot be changed? So let us see whether the attitude can be changed. Okay, here in the slide I have also shown attitude predicts behavior, which means our attitude, internal attitude, predicts our behavior. For example, if we have the attitude of voting for a particular person, politician, then we vote for him and then make him as a leader, right? So our attitude is reflected in our behavior. So here I would like to talk about an analogy. Perhaps I would like to give the example of Richard Lapierre. He talks about the inconsistency between people's attitude as verbally expressed in their actual behavior. Before going to Richard Lapierre's example, I would like to point out our own student life, right? When we come out of the examination hall, and my friend asks me, how have you written the examination? I said, okay, not sort of, not well, I didn't do it well. But then when the mark comes, right, it is like in the top 10. She will yell at me actually, okay? So we have this habit of not revealing our marks, or it is like how did you do the exam? We are not very sure. It is a kind of difference between the verbal explanation and the actual behavior. Okay, there is an inconsistency. So Richard Lapierre says he did a survey with the Chinese restaurants. Okay, they didn't permit a particular set of people from other community, right? So it is from, like, we can have the example of other country. But then in reality, when any foreign customers come, they were permitted inside. When a survey was given to them, when a questionnaire was administered to them, all the restaurants were unanimously saying that they didn't permit foreign customers. So Richard Lapierre says that there is Most of the time, 99% of the time, there is an inconsistency between people's attitudes of verbal expression and their actual behavior. Really, we would not have meant to hurt somebody. Orally, we would have thrown upon our emotions. Whereas in the heart of hearts, we will bless him. Right? So there is a whole lot of difference between this attitude and behavior. Situational pressure is actually overriding other considerations. So actually, though in the heart of hearts, we believe that certain things are possible, verbally we say, I am very doubtful whether I can do it or not. I am not very sure. Right? Whenever when I gave the first class to my research scholar to handle because I was not well on that particular day, she was not very sure of whether she can handle at all. Right? She didn't believe that she can handle the class well, but she was able to do it well. When I asked my students how was the class, right? They were all very happy with her session. So it is like not having that perhaps that assertiveness or the feeling of capacity of can do feel is not there in her in the initial stage. So how it can be done? Push them into their swimming pool and make them do it. That's what was done by my own professors when I was into teaching, right? They gave me classes and I was a research scholar, go and handle the classes. The first class was like a dream come true for me, right? When I'm seeing the whole lot of students just piercing into my eyes. So it is a different kind of an experience. Unless and until you face it, I think you cannot learn. And now when I'm saying that attitude is stable, it is internal, it is in the heart of hearts. Can we change the attitude? Can we change it? Yes. How can we change it? It can be done by persuasive communication. It is not just persuading or convincing somebody with an idea. It is also about a belief system. That is, you are openly trying to convince on the works when the message is delivered with credibility. Only they will believe in you only when you practice it, when you are a credible person, and when the source is trustable. So this feeling of trust is a great feel actually. It will not emerge on the first day itself. It is a belief system which will be slowly acquiring in you when you are acquainted with your person. We had a professor in our own department. He passed away in September 2015. Actually, when he was the head of the department and he gives many papers for us for signing it. Okay, he calls for a meeting and then when he circulates the paper, immediately we, 2 or 3 people in our own department, we just sign it off. He'll say, please read it and then sign it. But then we sign and then read. Okay, that's the kind of trust we had it in him. He does everything good for the department as well as for the members, right? He has not done, his vision has actually made the department expand today. Such a kind of, usually we have a vision for 5 years from now or like that, but he will have a vision for 15 years. Such a long vision he had, and he made people believe that he's working for them. Such a kind of confidence, such a kind of credibility he possessed. So it is a kind of personality you must possess in you where people believe in you when you are talking about persuasion. So here again, apart from this persuasive communication, trustworthy source, etc., it is also by the justification of effort. What kind of social environment we are living in also matters. For example, you can see the army boot camp example where when the commando says shoot, I think nobody will disobey. They are all in a same stable environment and immediately they will fire. Okay, so sometimes even the same social environment also makes us do things in a unanimous good way, right? So I have been talking about how attitude can be changed. It can be by credible sources, trustworthy sources. It can be because of the stable social environment, like the army bootcamp example. They will not even think for a moment like whether the boss is not right. Okay, immediately they will plunge into the action. So such a kind of immediacy is necessary in certain cases. If you are going to, when there is a circumstance to question, we can question. Sometimes we need to obey our higher ups, right? Because our delay in questioning will actually disturb the whole range of activities. Okay, especially in coordination programs and collaboration programs. When we are given the space to question, we must do it. It is not at the last minute we must question and disturb them. So the way we think can be altered, right? Whether we can handle the class on the first day. Yes, a research scholar can have the feel of a muscular power, which I have showed in this figure, or else she can be diffident about the activity. It is the factor of good feel you possess in you that makes you handle the session or the class. So here I come to the qualities which I'm going to talk about first. Though assertiveness is a form of base or the fundamental quality to become resilient, we'll deal with resilient content and then go to assertiveness, because I need to talk about assertiveness in 5 different dimensions. So we'll start off with this resilience. First, I'll say what is resilience, then we'll go for emotional resilience. So resilience is actually a capacity to spring back, rebound, and successfully adapt in the face of adversity. What is this kind of adversity? Adverse situations? Yes, there are many situations in our life which we encounter unexpectedly, right? I remember my professor's wife. I was talking about his death in September 2015. His wife was so dependent on him. She is educated, but then professor has not allowed her to be on her own, which means she's not an independent woman who can survive for herself. She was totally dependent on him, that even if he's late by a few hours in the evening, she'll be totally disturbed, right? It is good to have such a relationship, but then if the person is not there, how to survive? Immediately when sir passed away, like we were all worried for that madam, actually, how she's going to survive for herself. We could see the kind of grief engulfed in her when she was actually crying for her husband. She could not even draw money from ATM. That was her position. She had 2 children actually, and his son actually was about to get himself placed, but then he said, like, I want to go get into a core company, so he joined MBA. So he could have joined in a company, but he had at his mind that his father is there, so why should I go for a job? Let me go for my higher studies, MBA, then I'll come for the working culture. So everybody was dependent on him, and at that point of time, he left them. So who is going to take up now? Automatically, his wife has to take that position. We met her actually after 15 days to give certain document papers from our own institute. We were just assuming that she'll be very weak, how to make her cope up. We were just worried among ourselves. We 3 of us went there, but we could see her actually in a different emotional state. We didn't expect it at all. She was like very casual. She greeted us. She gave us coffee. She asked the purpose of our coming to her to home, right? And we were very curious to know what has happened, what kind of magic has happened in that 15 days. Then perhaps she told, like, when I saw my children's face, right? They were keenly looking at me, whether their future is going to be totally spoiled, right? My son was totally perturbed, whether he's to continue his job or he has left his continue his higher studies, right? How can he go again to a company where he has given a resignation letter? And and her daughter was worried, like how she's going to live without her father. Right, so she has the professor's daughter has just delivered a baby, and it was like 2 months old, right? And she had great dreams of that grandchild. Okay, so now from all this perspective, right, sir, apart from his profession of teaching, he also had some printing business. So it demanded of her, it was expected of her to take that printing business where she knows nothing about it. Okay, but then children said that Appa used to do like this, and grandfather, that is his father's father, right? He also helped him out, and she tried managing it. And after just 10 days, 15 days, she bounced back. to her position, to the husband's position. And amidst that adversity, she was able to come up in her personal, social, professional competence of running that business, managing the family, made her sons study for 2 years, right? Make her daughter believe that she's there in the position of the father. So she evolved from the stress and managed herself to a better position. Though she was educated, competent enough, she didn't have the feel of getting to that position, and because she was in a comfort zone. Now, when the position demanded, automatically she sprung having what in mind? Her children's future in mind, the children's mindset that if father died, we don't have anybody for us. She erased that particular feeling. Okay, so one particular example of resilience is this particular example I can give right now. We'll move on to the next point of the personal qualities that one enables one to thrive in the first phase of adversity. So, though she is educated, that kind of decisive action to take up the business. First, his son and the grandparents said that we can close the business, printing business. We need not pursue with it. She said, no, I'll take it up. I'll do it. Okay. We need not throw all the workers with us. We'll just continue with that. So now she's able to manage it on her own. She's able to visit that place. Sir had some properties in other places. She was able to go to that particular places, see whether it can be intact with the market share. She has sold some property. She has also made his son very comfortable, and he got placed in a very good company. And now marriage is over for his son also. So she is like in a way settled, right? She was able to come back with a kind of resilience as a competent behavior in herself. And so all the authors here I have quoted is actually from my own training program. I would like to give my thanks to Professor Senthil Adhiban, who has educated me on this particular ground, right, in a training the trainer workshop. So his grounding is more on psychology. So though I am not a psychology person, right, he has given us so many inputs, insights, articles to study, and that perhaps has paved my way into this kind of a lecture. So here you can see how the ability to overcome adversity and return to a person's previously established functional baseline. Maybe in her childhood days, maybe in her adolescent age, she would have been more functional, but nobody is aware of it when she is married to a person. So it is like a kind of functional baseline you possess within yourself, but then unless and until you have a grounding on that base, you will not know whether you are competent or not. So I have given again this definition of resilience. It is withstanding pressures and bouncing back quickly with energy, right? Energy, you just note this word. I'll be concentrating on that in the future slides. Quickly with energy after failures and setbacks, right? So we have setbacks in our life. We have failures in our life. So if you are going to lament about our sadness, failures, setbacks, I think our life is gone. So I think we'll have to spring back from that kind of pressures. And how we need to move stronger is the challenge before us. And I talked about resilience. Now I go into emotional resilience, where this bouncing back attitude should happen from negative emotional experiences. It is not from positive. I think we stay positive. What is you need not spring back and all, right? So you stay good, but from negative emotions we need to have so much of resilience in ourselves. That kind of capacity, it is like a huge wave. Okay, so that kind of bouncing back attitude can happen by adaptation, appropriate reactions, confront appropriately to the changing demands of stressful experiences. It is not that easy to come back from such a kind of failure sometimes, right? I just give one example. I am not saying that people who lose their husbands will totally will go off from their life, or the other way around of is it a big deal to come back from such setbacks? No, it is about the brought up of their acquaintance, their relationship in which a person survived. So I am talking about a lady who has not been opened into the world of social being, right? I said she is not able to withdraw money from her ATM. Now she is accessing so many accounts. So see the difference, see the extreme. Unless and until she is resilient, she cannot come to that nature, okay? So emotional resilience helps to retain a focus. So that resilience, that attitude actually made her fight with her sadness. And now that focus protects the psychological well-being of herself and their children. Because professor used to be very worried because she had pressure, right? It is like going into, it was very volatile actually, her pressure readings. But now she's able to take care of her health. She visits the doctor often. I must remove the word often actually. She, whenever it is necessary, she makes her visits properly. Okay, she manages her health as well as her profession, taking care of her children. So it is like a beautiful combo happening. So all the virtues we can learn, and we cannot say that this trait is more useful and things like that. But then the more essential for survival and more likely to improve the quality of life is how you transform adversity into enjoyable challenge. Okay, so certain people will have a great fear towards something, right? When you go for stress buster classes, they'll actually open up that fear element. They'll make you do that particular activity so that you shun away with that fear element. I do not know whether you had that kind of thing, right? My father used to do it. I always have a fear to walk in darkness, actually. I'll say I'll not go to the backyard after 6 p.m. or after 7 p.m. He'll make me go do some activity. He'll fetch that particular bucket, he'll say, or fetch that cup. He will push me in my adolescent age towards that, so that I'm used to it. Okay, when I'm functioning on my own. So effective and resilient personality, I think it has this 4 factors, tenets, right? Let us see what is it. They are doing, thinking, knowing, feeling. Okay, so you can even make it diagonally opposite so that it will be very easy to comprehend. We can start off with knowing things. That is a kind of self-awareness, I can say. Then perhaps you can think on it, think for yourself, whether it is plausible and how to go about doing it. Then plunge into activity. Then assess or feel for yourself whether it is good or bad. Right? When I'm saying this kind of feeling, you can think, you can assess it for a while. It is not going into the next stage of lamenting. I could have done it this way, I could have done it that way. If you're going to, the whole day, if you're going to think about that particular experience, I think it is going to take away your time as well as your peace of mind. You can assess it and make it better the next time. Okay, you can always evaluate it, but for the appropriateness in it. So a resilient person, you can see how he appropriately balances all this knowing, thinking, doing, and feeling. If it is functioning in a perfect combination, I think you can certainly be an effective, resilient personality. We'll see more examples of this kind. We'll move into the next slide. And it is appropriately balanced and appropriately used. I didn't mention that particular point. So appropriately using it is, I was talking about the feeling which you need to assess, right? You can assess or evaluate a particular event for a while. You need not go ahead for a whole duration of the day. Next is the 3 related elements of emotional resilience. Number 1 is self-esteem and self-confidence, believing in oneself efficacy and ability to deal with change and adaptation. Third is possessing a range of social problem-solving skills. So this self-confidence and self-esteem, I think I explained it in my earlier session, but still I'll just make a mention of it. Self-confidence is the first step towards self-esteem, right? And prior to that, we must have the self-awareness. Then comes your confidence of, I can do it, the can-do feeling. Then perhaps self-respect. Because of that self-confidence and your action in a good nature, you come about a good self-respect in you, that is called as self-esteem. Okay, that's self-respect. So if somebody is going to talk ill about your profession, automatically you dispute it and say that it is not that way, right? You need not be subservient and say that yes, my profession is like this. You need not be so diffident about your own profession. You should feel good about your profession, whether you, otherwise you cannot be satisfied in your life. So belief in one's own self-efficacy and the ability to deal with the change and adaptation. We all know that change is only constant and we need to adapt ourselves. So this kind of self-efficacy, they're having the feel-good factor of the ability to do one particular activity. That has to be developed by either by acquiring, by seeing some personalities, listening to good lectures, any kind of choice you can make. Okay, so some spark may occur in certain persons due to adverse situations, anything it may kind be, right? It is not that one can learn only from adverse situation. You can also learn from good lectures. It depends on the personal experience again. And then the third one is possessing a range of social problem solving skills. Whenever there is a challenge before you, right? In 1 year back, right, I used to say issues. Right now, we are trying to overlook that particular word, right? So I have been mentored not to use that word issues or problem. Right? Instead of that, you can use a better word like challenge. Instead of postpone, they are asking me to use words like advance. So it is all small word usages of words. How you can better it in your own lectures. So yeah, emotionally resilient person tend to have a hardy personality to manage stress and strains of life. So this hardy personality, it is not that you are going to be silent and not talking to people, very stubborn, adamant. No, that not that kind of a personality. I am talking about an assertive personality who is not going to throw our words in a reactive manner. So commitment plus control plus challenge gives you a sense of purpose and direction. That is going to be this control of your reactions of feelings towards a person. Immediately somebody hurts you, you want to take a revenge and throw over all your emotions. So no, you are going to have a control over oneself. Okay, then let me face it approach. So what kind of commitment are we supposed to have? A kind of purposefulness, a kind of direction, a focus towards a particular activity. In research, I think this is the first requisite one research scholar is expected to have, right? Committed scholars have always excelled in their research thesis and they have glorified themselves as well as me. Whereas if they are going to have their shifting attention of diverting, they'll not even land in the research problem. Shall I do this? Shall I do that? Will it be better if I'm going to land that? You can analyze, but for how many years? Okay. So if you are going to have that internal locus of control, faith in one's ability and efforts, I think you can take up the challenge of let me face it approach. Okay. So all that has to have due proportions. Yeah, I'm not saying that you must not think for a while. Yes, you can. When before taking a research problem, you will have to think for yourself, analyze, right? Take up the research problem, and analyze its pros and cons. See the plausibility of working for the research avenue. State the research gap. All that, right? We need to pursue all that, but there is a time duration, and we need to do it appropriately in a balanced way and use it proper. So resilience as a competency. I'll just list all the points, bulletins I have so that you can read for yourself. These 9 behavioral indicators actually makes you travel to achieve that competence, I can say. So what is that? You must possess the can-do attitude. I think I would have said all this, withstanding pressure, different kind of approaches and strategies to achieve desired results. So just because one has done this, we need not do it, right? You can customize it according to your own ways and means. You can take appropriate situations. Sometimes you can even do the humorous side of it, right? I don't, one of my colleague cracks jokes in a way that it doesn't hurt us, right? I can also quote some other colleague who always hurts others with his humors, right? If you are not going to be assertive, I think they'll make you walk away with that kind of unnecessary humors, right? So there are two sides of humor. So if you are able to play with that kind of humor, you can take it up. I don't take it up because I can crack timely jokes at times, right? If I am not casual, or if I am not able to do it with the first time acquaintance, I'll not try it unnecessarily. Unless and until I am good with the close associates, I will not give away my timely jokes, because sometimes if it is taken the other way around, or if it is taken in an ambiguous sense, you may have to face unnecessary constraints. So here you will have to adapt quickly to unexpected changes. You cannot be I can even use a word called lazy or less risky sometimes to certain situations, right? You cannot be doing things at your own pace. You will have to be a little bit quick. At the same time, you must not be hasty enough to finish it off. You must accept responsibility even for failures. If you are not going to accept your responsibility, you cannot bounce back quickly with that kind of energy. I'll talk about that energy element after a few slides. So this accepting responsibility. So I talked about the professor's wife who immediately bounced back and took up the responsibility of running the family, right? Because of the adverse situation and bouncing back attitude, it was possible. Apart from that, she also had the capacity to do it. Now she has mentally accepted, believed in herself, and then stood up for that position. So do you think that she would not have done mistakes at all? She did, right? But then she learned from the mistakes, strengthened it, and changed it according to the future. So it is like learning from your mistakes. So at times, right, we commit mistakes, we can ask sorry for it, and then we can go ahead with it, right? We need not lament about it. So resilience as a competency, you can see how the 9 behavioral indicators have made it possible. So Viktor Frankl has said, he who has a why to live can almost bear with any how. Can you understand this quote? Actually, Viktor Frankl says his why. Why here is the purposefulness, right? If you have that why in you, then you can almost bear with any kind of how, any kind of adverse situations. Okay, we'll see about that. So the building blocks of emotional resilience are, first is going to be purposefulness. A clear sense of destination you must have, the direction you must have towards that why. It is not just asking a question why. Okay, without knowing any answer or without knowing any purpose, the meaning in life, it is not a travel like that. Okay, it is a travel with well-defined values. Sometimes people have that belief in spirituality and they have full confidence on the spiritual being, and then they go accordingly. That gives them the strength. Perhaps they would have got some good blessings from them. You would have seen Professor Thamaraselvan's video on Aravind Eye Hospital, right? There, the visionary of that particular man, okay, who had that spiritual sense of Aurobindo. At the same time, he had the capacity in himself. With 11 beds, he was able to make so many franchise. You can see how it has blossomed. Okay, so the purposefulness, the clear sense of destination and direction. Next comes the confidence. Here, I think the base is self-awareness, as I have told you. It can be the emotional aspect of it or overall, all-rounder, right? So then comes the self-confidence and then the self-esteem and the feeling of competence. Competence here refers to the knowledge, right? And for example, if she had not been educated, how she can take up that business, okay? Then you must have the internal locus of control. Though she has not involved in such an activity, she has been seeing her husband doing such activities. So she imagined herself, okay, for this he used to do like this. So shall I'll put myself in that particular position and see for myself. Well, it worked. It didn't work properly. Okay, I'll do it in my own way. So you take the internal locus of control and then start working. Prior positive experiences, either you can see it from somebody, you can learn it from somebody, or you would have had good experiences in your own life. So take that as your base Take that as your review of literature background and then go for its function. Then comes the adaptability, that is accepting changes, understanding and accepting the changes, and flexibility to change. I think that is more important these days. People say that I am adaptable. It is not like going behind the back of somebody. That is not adaptable. In most of the CVs I have seen, because they give, so students used to write CVs and they give it for correction, right? I would have seen, I am adaptable, they'll write. What is this adaptability? It is not like changing like a chameleon. It is not that way. So it is accepting whenever there is a huge change for the positive good of everybody. I think you must accept that. It may be difficult. It can be a good workload, but that is going to affect you. But it is going to for the betterment of the department. Please accept it. Accept the consequences too, and be flexible in accepting that change. So if it is for the larger good, my professor used to always say, if it is for the larger good of the department, please accept. It might be a small constraint for you. For handling 8:30 classes, there will always be a constraint in us, 8:30 to 9:20. We need to, if we are in the campus, it is very convenient. We people who are staying outside, it is a great hiccup for us. So we say, sir, we don't want the first class. So he says sometimes this 8:30 sessions, you have people attending it so fresh. Okay, so you sometimes this 8:30 sessions actually they give it from department wise. In certain semesters we get more of 8:30, 9:20 sessions, and sometimes we get the afternoon sessions. It is worse actually. People will, though they are the strength will be intact, you will not have people to listen. So you have both ways, right? So sometimes our small adaptability, our small flexibility will benefit a larger good of people. So we can do it. And the fourth one is the social support. Yes, sometimes I think this emotional resilience factor is backed up by social support. When professor's wife, madam, had that adverse situation, his children actually stood with her, grandparents stood with her actually, right? So there, I think that social extended support system made her thrive along. So we must also in our career develop this network of supporters. So networking need not be purely on our work basis. Sometimes it can be on that. When I'm saying work basis, you need not be always bothering about the cost factor or the remuneration part of it when you are networking. Sometimes it is for the goodness and the well-being of us. For example, it is like we in our institute do so many humanity oriented activities. We involve our students and we go about doing that. There is a separate cell for it, and faculty members involve themselves with students and we go ahead with the activity. So when we have a sense of self-satisfaction, students have it. It is a kind of healthier practice which we do it. So that support systems in a way actually helped us in our entrepreneurial activity for our institute. So it is like a give and take policy. You do not expect something and do it, but then it comes back in a larger good. And the ability to seek support. Sometimes when we are organizing workshops, we go for sponsorships, and seeking support is not wrong. And sometimes that kind of sponsorship make you get good participants who listen and disseminate knowledge in a better way. So that willingness to support, if somebody is taking up a training the trainer program, right? So many of us asked how this kind of program, how to apply for it and things like that. We have told them certain informations, right? And so when we are running this program simultaneously, one of our training the trainer in Hyderabad is doing a program, not Atal, but he's doing some other program of the same kind. So you can see how knowledge dissemination can happen with a social support, or people who are going to take up challenges can have this kind of social support system. Even in our day-to-day life, all our working mothers will agree with me. Unless and until you have a support system in your home, I think we people cannot thrive well in our career. It is very difficult for female. Okay, so this kind of commitment and challenge for the purposefulness and adaptability within that particular domains, if you have the commitment and challenge, And between this confidence and adaptability, if you are going to have the control and optimism, and between the social support and confidence, if you have the connectedness and assertiveness, and between social support and purposefulness, if you have the perseverance and decisive action, I think you can feel empowered. Okay, so I wanted to look at this building block slide a little bit closer. Words which I have used of perseverance, decisive action, assertiveness, all that is very, very crucial for this both emotional resilience as well as for our assertive actions. So when I'm talking about this connectedness, it is not just interacting with a person for your own good. This connectedness is going to be the base for your network, and it is sometimes going to give you betterment in your life as well as your career. So I used to ask clarifications with my professor while I was doing my research. Apart from my guidance from my official guide, I used to seek expertise from experts in that particular field. One such expert, actually, even today, he gives us lectures in training the trainer programs. So that connectedness, that sustenance, you can see how it is traveling beautifully. So he was a kind of moral mentor for most of us in our team of this conducting workshops, right? We love to talk with him for quite a lot of time, right? Because you can see the kind of casualness, his humor, his assertiveness, right? That we all enjoy in his lectures as well as talking outside the sessions. So sometimes you can see our research scholars are having that kind of possessing this perseverance attitude to complete their research in the possible way by decisive actions and fulfilling it and getting their graduation. Whereas some of them are not possessing this attitude of perseverance, where I think they don't believe in themselves, so they cannot complete it also. I was talking about Subrata Bashi's sense of certifying the completeness in their project works. So I think that kind of attitude is very necessary for research scholars, sometimes for teachers, sometimes for our own adolescent kids in our home, right? Unless and until they are able to select a decisive course for their own life, they'll say that they'll put the blame on us, saying that you only made me study this particular program, education program, so I'm not able to do well. Leave it for themselves, make them, you can give all your suggestions for their betterment, but make them take a decisive action. Next comes this emotional resilience, the building. I was talking about building blocks of emotional resilience, where this is inborn. I have already told that it is innate in us, but it can also be learned, or it should be learned, perhaps, right? If it is not inborn in you, if you are a very fearful person, you can, I'm not saying you should be totally fearless. Sometimes when we are about to do a session, we must have some small fear of it should all go well. When we are starting a program, we pray God and we initiate it. Right? A man or a woman should have a small fear element also, that we should do it well. That part of fear is okay. But if you are totally fearful of a particular activity, you don't indulge in any kind of workshops like this, or you don't indulge in any kind of knowledge dissemination because you are a shy person, you are an introvert person. No, you will have to come out of your shell, right? So if you are not possessing that inborn quality, then you will have to learn it and strengthen it for the meaningful life of it. The steps for it: first is self-awareness, next is analysis, next is acceptance, next is arriving at the decision, and the last one is the assertive action. So you can see the bottom line here, the awareness, that is the first step. Okay, you must be self-aware that you are capable enough. Then you must analyze the pros and cons of that particular activity. It can be a entrepreneurial activity, it can be a business venture, it can be anything that is risky in your life. You have to analyze the pros and cons of it. Then you must have the mental acceptance of doing it further, that can-do attitude. Then arriving at a decision. When you need to come for a position, I think you will have to have that decisive action of throwing open yourself into that pool of confidence and plunge into action. So that action, when it happens, when you are going to perform, I think it has to be assertive enough. And more of assertiveness I'll talk about in my further slides. So events actually do not directly cause your emotional reactions. I think you will agree with me. from my earlier sites, it is not actually, event itself is not making you feel sad or making you feel grief. What else does? Our thoughts and beliefs about them actually cause emotional disturbances. So I gave the example of army boot camp. If you are in that stable social environment, even certain grief, your own pathos actually are sidelined. When you are fighting for the country, I think that is the utmost priority. Everything else is pushed aside. When the commando says shoot them, then automatically you confront or encounter with the enemies. Right? You are not saying that my father had expired yesterday, I cannot go into the field. You will have all that grief, but you are putting it that in one corner and you are plunging into life. So it is the kind of environment that is making you feel good and plunge into that particular activity. So it is also the thoughts, it is also the belief system that is causing this emotional disturbances. Belief system, if it is positive and if it is going to take you in great positions, you can just go ahead with it. But if it is going to pull you out in a social circumstance and put you in a corner, I think you will have to evade from that rationally. Okay. So this ABC model of resilience will tell more about it. Based on the approach of Albert Ellis, this is actually, this slide is prepared. Based on the adversity, being in a challenging, uncomfortable position, which is going to lead you into consequences, it can be emotional or behavioral, that is actually going to put you down, you feel for the situation. There, what you need to not do is you are thinking and interpreting of that particular situation, that belief system. I was talking about it right now, right? So if it is going to put you down, that belief system, if it is a superstition or if it is a rumor, please just go ahead of it. For example, right, a child getting low marks, it can be your own kid who is getting low marks. What is the imperfect wrong thing we do? First is we are very angry with the child. Then as a parent, you feel guilty. As a working mother, if I had been in home, I could have educated her. I could have sat with her, and I could have been a moral support. All that guilt feel you have. Then okay, fine. That is going to be a temporary setback. You mentally accept it, and then next time, Papa, you can do well, right? You cope with her, and then you just make her feel good, and then we go ahead. So these are like three options. So that mental acceptance, if I'm not saying you should not feel for this kind of situation. You can, but for how much time? That temporary setback, you must feel. If you are going to scold her to the extreme, if you are going to say that you are not fit for anything, that kind of words actually put them totally off, and they go to extreme these days. And these adolescent pampered children of today, you have read many incidents in the newspapers. You would have read that, right? So they would not have. They are very fragile people. They are very pampered these days. So in such a kind of situations, we need to be very careful in dealing with such student community or even your own kids. So you must have the mental acceptance to digest all that. And it can be your own example. Sometimes we don't get promotions due in the year we have, right? 10 years, sometimes we slog for 10 years for moving into the next position. There, if you are going to grudge, I remember one particular female faculty, right? She was having that grief in her, which made her get into cancer, and she actually passed away. Okay, it more of preoccupance of, because she was denied of her promotion for about 20 years. That actually made her lament about it again and again, and she was trying when her one of her colleague was given and she was not given. She was not able to mentally digest it, and somehow that she developed cancer, right? And she was not able to survive. See how your mental state in your profession is going to affect your personal well-being. Okay, and always my professor used to tell her, quote her example and say that, see, so women do not have the grief, right? Vent out your feelings whenever possible. It is not like in a way that it can be thrown out. Vent out your feelings to your close friend, to your close associate, whenever possible, and come back from it. Consider it as a temporary setback, and then grow from it. Okay, so this is the ABC model of resilience. So beliefs refers to the thinking pattern and the interpretation of the situation that is being cultured in us most of the time. Okay, if it is for the positive, take it, make the analysis. If it is for the negative sense of you, please do not go ahead like a herd mentality. We can question it, we can dispute with it, and we can go beyond it actually. A caterpillar never feels emotionally upset, right? Because it's very small and it is not so good, right? Most of the time we are worried about our own personalities. I have my friend who is very dark in her complexion, and she has the complex of feeling not so good when she performs on stage, right? She also conducts sessions like this, but then whenever I ask her, have you come out of that? She says, still I have that small feel of I'm not looking so good when I am presenting. Right? This dark complexion has been put into her head that she is not looking good by her grandparents. She has been often told that she is dark, very dark, and not looking so good. Right? So if a caterpillar is going to think like this, right? It will not survive. But it knows when I grow, right, I can blossom like a butterfly. Beautiful butterflies everybody is going to cherish. Okay, so coming out of the cocoon, it is going to become beautiful butterflies. So we need not feel emotionally upset for our physicality because that is going to change over a period of time. And even if it is the complexion is not going to change, everybody is not going to look in the uh, look for the cover, right? A book is not judged by the cover. Okay, so we are going to look into the content of what she is going to deliver. That's what I usually tell her. So people are going to look for the content and the delivery of what you're going to talk about rather than the dark complexion you have. So gone are the days where people just look the the face of it, right? The outer personality. Now we are bothered about more of inner personality in a human being because it is very essential for networking these days. Unless and until some person is very approachable, we are not able to continue with our negotiations. Okay, so the ABCDEF of emotional resilience. So when during adverse circumstances or during adversities, we must possess the belief that we can survive. You can push aside the consequences, but then have that consequences in mind, but it should not allow you to disturb it. And then you must dispute the belief I said, right? If it is for the right or the betterment or the innate good in you, you can accept it. Then you must energize yourself, right? It is like you must energize not your physical energizing, like every day you do your exercise in the morning, you go for walking, you do some exercise, not that kind of an exercising. That is for the good physique you must have. Good physical well-being, yes, I accept it. But here it is the mental energizing. You must have that capacity to feel good. You must have the total strength to face all the consequences. That kind of energizing you must develop in yourself, and that new feelings is going to keep in you the happiness, that balloon which is having a smiley can be happiness, it can be success, it can be satisfaction, it can be any new feeling that you are going to embarrass with, right? Sorry, encounter with. You need not have embarrassments that it will be a failure. You need not have any guilt feeling during your travel. Okay, so only I saying this energization should happen with your brain, with your cognition. Okay, that cognition is going to remove all the social stigmas in life, okay, which you always possess or which is cultured in you. That removes all the social stigmas, and rationally you are going to evaluate. Okay, so becoming resilient rationally and emotionally, these are few points which you can always have it intact in your mind. First one is targeting the disturbing event. I said, do what you fear most. That was the example given to me in my younger days by my father. So if you are having the fear of darkness, or if you're having the fear of facing a crowd, if you are having the fear of plunging into a water, all that, right? Target the disturbing event. If it is a problem solving, if you can feel that it can be overlooked, try for it, solve the problem. Sometimes certain things cannot be changed. What cannot be changed? The complexion of a person cannot be changed. That is a gene. You cannot change the complexion of a person. But now she has changed her reactions toward it. Come what may, that is the kind of attitude now she has. After doing n number of sessions with participants, she is not bothered about her outlook. She is bothered about her inner personality, where she is able to deliver something so good compared to the other resource persons. Right? You can see the transformation that has happened in my friend, where the physical appearance cannot be changed, whereas certain disturbing events, for example, the adverse situations where my professor's wife has got over it. So target the disturbing event. If it is possible, you can do it. If it is not possible, you change your reaction. That's all. So be aware, analyze it, and dispute the irrational beliefs. Rationally, you need to move over these irrational beliefs. If there is some superstition, if there is going to be a gossip, if there is going to be any rumor, you accordingly do it. Manage the consequences. I'm not saying you will not going to have consequences at all. You will have consequences. Manage the consequences by being aware of it, assessing the impact of it, accept lesser negative ones, attempt to change strong negative impact, ignoring, bypassing, substituting, and outgrowing. I like the last word, outgrowing. It is like outperforming something. Whenever we conduct research experiments, right, when the control group is outperformed by the experimental group. Because of the pedagogical intervention, we always say that the control group is outperformed by the experimental group. So this kind of outgrowing mentality can be done, that kind of by the intervention of, it can be by self or from the learned acquisition. So it can be aware of emotional consequences, assess its impact, and accept lesser negative ones. This lesser negative ones, in that sense, people will have negative feedback, right? It is not that you are not going to say no for it. You are not going to listen at all, or you are not going to see that feedback at all. No, it is not that way. You see it and see how you can grow over it. Okay. Sometimes if it is going to be totally damaging, you can ignore it for a while. You can bypass it, stop to substitute it with your betterment, and outgrow it. So that's how feedback skills itself, we started with positive. We do it that way. Most of the time in all the training the trainer programs, there is a small session on feedback where participants actually have the attitude of just either saying totally positive or totally negative. You can start off with some positives and also talk about negatives. Our own chief coordinator, he always asks for only negatives. He'll say positives, we know, right? We know ourselves. Just talk about the negatives. But when he's asking it itself, certain teachers will have good intention of sharing it in a better way. Others will prick at you sometimes. So we must have an equal balance of taking it, digesting it, and improving on such negative comments. So amplify skills to reveal emotional, sometimes verbal or non-verbal. We need to amplify it in a exact appropriate scale. One step extra also, people will call you aggressive. There is a thin demarcation line between assertiveness and aggressiveness, right? I'll talk about that in my further slides. So here you can see this grief factor. Okay, it is not going to surmount in life always. Right? You can excel in it, you can grow beyond it. So grief is not going to be patterned throughout your life. The 5 emotions that is associated with the lack of resilience is anger, sadness, guilt, anxiety, and embarrassment. I have talked about this. Most of the time, people are occupied with a guilt feel that they throw upon their anger in a different kind of a fashion. So building resilience, you can see how you need to accept the situation, escape from the role as victim of circumstances, develop optimism, focus on potential solutions, use imagination and take responsibility for your life, build a support network, and plan a flexible strategy. Occasionally, you can use humor in difficult situations. Okay, so this Hanuman approach, I think if it is possible, you can apply it. I think in the ethos, I think in work ethic also you can follow. If you are going to imagine yourself from an extended outlook, if you're going to take a wider perspective and he's carrying that whole hills in his hand, you can see that because he is not able to fetch the appropriate plant. So he's taking the whole lot. So while facing a problem, right, you need to grow in a larger potential like this and grow beyond it, like the Hanuman approach. I'll move a little bit fast for want of time because I need to talk about assertiveness. So this is a I said assertiveness is going to be the base for emotional resilience. And both this assertiveness and emotional resilience is going to contribute for the well-being of a person. Okay, so we are all born as assertive child. Okay, but then we are made to be non-assertive by the society or the brought up or the background or by parenting sometimes, right? I'll give the example of laddus and jangris, right? I had this example from my own professor. He used to always have this, right? When children are taken to other friends' house, right? Sometimes children take away all that is given to them in a small plate of maybe a laddu or jangri, right? They just consume it, right? One such thing happened to this. I'm sorry. This child, right? This boy has taken all the laddus for the first time. And he liked laddu, so when it was offered to him, he took it. Immediately, his parents actually, when they came home or during the travel itself, they started, right? How can you have all the laddus, right? As if we have not given laddus at all. Why are you actually plunging on it? He was actually scolded like anything by his mother and father. Next time, when jangris were offered, like the first girl, right? He or she said no, right? So this concept of laddus and jangris, right? So as children, we are assertive. We know how to say no whenever it is not given, whenever it is given to us. I'm sorry. So, but then we grow non-assertive because of our emotional, social circumstances, right? Assertiveness is an approach to deal with people around you, especially who cause emotional disturbances. As a child, sometimes you are totally disturbed, right? Either they are saying you are eating too much. Next time, when it is offered, you said no. There also his mother scolds. What? For that, you will not take even one. You can at least take one laddu. You can take one jangri for you, right? So the child is confused now, whether to take it or not take it. Okay, to be here or not to be. He's very confused. So I think sometimes we need to acquaint our own children with the goodness of certain ethics, right? Values, how to go about interact with the social environment, how to make the betterment in lives. I think those are all skills which they can learn from you during the travel of life. So assertiveness, I can say it is also it is not confidence, but it is a form of confidence. Okay, so it is a ability or approach you deal with people around you. So that interpersonal ability, if you are able to possess, you can beautifully handle it. So this is like a definition, or you can take it as a point. Non-anxiety assertiveness is a non-anxiety producing socially appropriate interpersonal behavior. So you see the child learns over a period of time how to behave with his own community, how to behave with the society, how to behave in school, how to behave in career. So it is like, so you are going to give the belief system honestly, if you are going to put it straightforward, without any prejudice, without any bias, if you're going to put it straight on him, automatically he's nurtured good with expressions of thoughts and feelings that is considerate for others. May it be a boy or may it be a girl, if you're going to have that, give that equal proportion of nurturing, I think you can produce an assertive individual, a non-anxiety person with appropriate interpersonal behavior. So assertiveness is being honest without being rude. It is about what you really want. It is allowing others to feel safe and get what they want to do. It is not being aggressive, I said. At the same time, you are making the others feel that they are safe and good. You respect others. You respect yourself, and you do not intentionally hurt people here. Assertiveness comprises of the abilities to reveal oneself through words, feeling, thinking, and wants. Once my professor, right, he talked about his train experience to us. When he wants to do a session for us the other day, the next day morning, he was traveling in the night train, Rockford actually. So he wanted to do some work in laptop, and he had the lower berth as we have reserved for him. And one person was lying in that lower berth, and he said, "Go and sit there." He didn't make a request, anything. Simply he said, "Go and work, sit there." If my professor had been aggressive, he must have said, I have possessed a ticket, I have some work with the laptop, how can I go and sit in that side lawyer berth? I cannot work there, I'll never go there. Okay, so professor is also an aged person, and most probably they were of equal age. But there is a way of telling it. He didn't do it that way. The other person, he said, "This is my seat. I want it. I need it right now." That's all he said. And when it was told in a manner that is going to be delivered, automatically the person took away all his bed and other belongings, and he went to the side lawyer berth. So assertiveness is not hurting others, not having the guilt feel that he is also an aged person and he had some wound in his leg, it seems. That he should have told it, but he didn't request it. He didn't tell that situation also. So the professor didn't have any guilt feel at all, right? You can see how he was very assertive enough to tell that it was his seat. He has all the right to possess it. So I want it. That's all. He didn't give any other explanation that I need to work with my laptop. I have the plug point here. All that he didn't tell at all. So you can exercise your rights without affecting others, right? So that person, I do not know what difficulty he had in lying down in that side lawyer, but somehow with the authority he said, go and sit there. That was not released by the professor. Okay. So you need to communicate openly, directly, and honestly with people at all levels. That is assertiveness. You need to initiate and continue successfully until your conversation terminates. Sometimes it is by assertively saying no, right? When it is necessary. To make requests or favors when it is necessary again. To express positive and negative feelings. When I'm saying to say a no is assertiveness, whatever job is allocated to you, it is not, if you say no, you are not going to be called as an assertive person. Not that way, right? When it is always demanding in you to do that work, if you are not there, the whole work is going to be affected. Do not cultivate that kind of a system. Start decentralizing your works whenever even if you are not in a position to do that work, somebody has to take up that work. Such a kind of system have to be evolved over a period of time. So assertive individuals actually respect themselves, accepting their limitations. Sometimes there is a minus, they accept it. Those individuals are called assertive. They respect others' rights and feelings. And assertive person make things happen. He will never go for a negative declination active kind of activities at all. So while becoming assertive, you actually prepare to take risks in life. You just ignore the rejection, aggression, losing friends, ignoring. Those are all temporary setbacks, I can say. Temporary constraints you will have while you're taking risks. Some people will say that this is a too ambitious activity. I'll not stand with you while you're doing it. Some people will ignore you. Some people will just walk away. Such kind of rejections you will face in the initial part of your journey. But then over a period of time, when you are successful, automatically they'll join hands. Okay, so here you can see in the long run how assertiveness is leading to other people understanding and accepting you better. There your stress and strain is reduced. Your reduced vulnerabilities. It is emotional freedom you have, reduced exploitation, good mental health. All this pave way for meaningful interpersonal relationships. So when you are emotionally resilient, you are assertive, automatically it will develop into meaningful interpersonal relationships. And that will certainly contribute to increased well-being. So you can get assured of that physical as well as mental well-being nurtured in you. So assertiveness will certainly not lead to hating others, antagonizing others, refusing to adjust, demanding or commanding from others, everything. All these are small points. You know that when you need not be aggressive. I have already said assertiveness and aggression are not identical twins. One step extra of assertiveness, if you are going to give to your opponent, it will become aggression. Either it is verbal or non-verbal, right? You are going to make comfortable. At the same time, without hurting others, you are going to be assertive in telling the command. As professor told the person, this is my birth. I have all the right to use it. I need it. That's all. He exercised his rights successfully. So inappropriate, excessive assertiveness plus hostility will lead to aggression, right? Automatically, when we point the fingers, then the other person gets at a rage and we'll encounter aggressive situation there. So even if the other person is like that, here you can see the girl pointing the hand towards, finger towards the girl. But if you are having the rational choice of taking the risk mentality, then you can just have your hands on your hip and you can face it. But there is some time, place, and manner for it. Not in adverse situations of you are in a new place where some thieves or gundas are occupying you. There you are not going to put your hands on your hip and face the situation like this. So it is also involving the rational choice of time, place, and manner. So here you have the list of contrasting style behaviors. You can see how passive people are like doormats, giving up their self. They are always apologizing. When they are expected to submit any assignments or work, or they are expected to complete a project, they always give some excuses. They'll fly away from situations, events. Aggressive people will take over others. They'll be like a road roller. They'll blame, they'll accuse. They will stare at other people. They'll have a very loud voice. They will invade the space. They will fight with people. The other quality is a combination of passive and aggressive. They are like doormats with spikes, actually. Okay, they'll be sarcastic and they'll have sideways glances. They'll divert from the speech and things like that. Final assertive people, actually, they maintain their self. They duly respect others. They speak their mind openly and directly. They are like a strong pillar. They have direct gaze, varied voice, but balanced stance. They engage people in a beautiful way. So you can see the contrasting style behaviors, how it ranges from a doormat to a pillar. So you need not be like a doormat, like everybody stamping on you. Either you need not be a road roller. You can be a strong pillar. Okay. So these 5 basic rights, you need not hurt someone else by doing things. You can maintain your dignity by being assertive. You can realize, you can make request of another person as long as you realize that the other person has the right to say no. When you're asking anything, as you have the right to say no, they will also say no, right? You must always have that concept. You must not say, whenever I'm saying as like a higher authority, you must obey it. You cannot have subordinates like this in these days. So in certain borderline cases, you can see how in interpersonal situations, you have the right to discuss the problem with the person involved and clarifying it. So there you have the right to attain your own rights. Okay, you discuss the problem, analyze it, and you attain your right. So if you are going to be too subservient, if you are not going to recognize your rights and stand up for it, people will stamp on you. Otherwise, people will define your role for you. As she's taking the cup of tea, you can see. So they'll not allow you to be yourself. Okay, so you will have to function in a better way with that kind of people. So fluency of speech, voice modulations, content of the speech. If you are all maintaining all these verbal components, yes for yes and no for no, I think then you can be assertive in a better way as well as verbal component is concerned. And you will have to talk very fluently and extemporaneously, right? So if you're going to go extempore, then it is not like non-stop nonsense like radio jockeys sometimes do, right? Certain people beautifully vocalize that and articulate their thought process. Certain people become a nuisance. So you will have to balance that notion. Non-verbal cues, I think I have already said that you must have your direct eye contact. You must have your upright sitting posture. You must have the appropriate emotional expression and emotional distance. Some of students these days, they encroach your space, right? So you must tell them how you have to maintain the physical distance. And nowadays, I think the social distancing concept have made us all aware about the whole notion of it. But still, you can talk about all that non-verbal components. So these are some non-verbal cues: eye contact, gestures, postures. Gestures is actually kinesthetic. Postures is stagnant. Proximity is the space. Paralinguistic features is like all the tone, deliverables are called as paralinguistic features, and humor, of course. If it is possible for you to make it function in a better way, you can do your timely jokes. So becoming assertiveness is to tell a decisive no, right? In a non-defensive, non-apologetic, not leaving decisions to others. Speak in an audible, firm tone, and give prompt and brief reply whenever that is necessary, and do not give long pauses, right, and fillers by saying etc. etc. So avoid that with brief replies. and make others treat you fairly, justly. Point out when they don't. When your colleagues treat you in an improper way, tell them in an assertive way that this is not the way to be treated. You must include me in the committee for such and such a reason. Okay? That is an example, right? So you are going to substantiate your valid point in an assertive way. So this is becoming assertive. So you are going to listen and suggest alternatives whenever appropriate. You are going to avoid evasion, use I messages than you messages, right? So honestly, when you are expressing feelings, I think you need not point out somebody like you. You can say it happened like this for me. So why not you make it right? You need not target the behavior. You can target the you can target the behavior, not the person. For example, if you're going to give a feedback for your session, instead of saying that about the person concerned, the individual concerned, you can talk about the content or the way in which it was delivered. There also, I think you will have to tell it with the I messages. Very effective in expressing your feelings about someone whose behavior has become a problem for you. It is non-judgmental and it is the feelings about you, right? So here you have this issue, effects, feelings, and change. What you would prefer the other person to you, that you can always preach or practice. Okay. Similarly, many examples I have given, which I will go fast a little bit. If you do not complete what you promised to do, then the effect is sometimes you feel annoyed, right? So I wish you would do what you have promised. That's a kind of if I were you, I would have done this in this way. So such a kind of feedback, this is not what I expected in you. So such feedback actually enriches the others or enriches your opponent and make them behave in a better manner. Okay, tell me what I am doing wrongly so that I can correct it. Okay, and I think it is getting time. 1 second. Harishri?
Unmute yourself, ma'am.
I need to complete it, right? That's the indicator. Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm coming to the final slides. I'm skipping some of the examples and I'm concluding it. So this is the examples, right? That you can see it for yourself. So assertiveness, the 5 F's I was talking about. This is my last but one penultimate slide. So you can be friendly, you can be firm, focused, fair, and frank. At the same time, you can be staying assertive. So these are the 5 F's which is going to make you assertive, and you can choose what you can become, like the caterpillar, and you can feel empowered and nurture your graduates as leaders. Okay, thank you.